Hello, I'm Tiffany Hawkins, a counseling coordinator here, and I will be the host for the rest of the Q&A.
And I'm Mark Nix. I'm one of the pastors here at Orangewood, and I'm also a licensed mental health counselor.
I'm Tara Gibson. I'm a physical therapist.
I'm Paul Gibson. I'm the associate pastor of congregational care. I have my doctorate in marriage and family counseling, and I want to be like Mark.
We just wrapped up our Exploring Family Dynamics seminar as part of our Explore series here at Orangewood. And while we were able to answer a lot of questions from you guys, we still had some questions we couldn't get to. We strive to continue exploring and providing resources for you. We wanted to take some time to answer those remaining questions for you. If you missed the event and want to watch it, you can check out the description below. And if you're looking for more resources, you can visit our webpage, orangewood.org/explore, for anything you need. What are the best ways to model emotional health for kids when we as the parents are struggling?
I think you know what you know. You're realistic about what you can't do. I was taught to put it this way: know what you know what you don't know when to get help. So if you are struggling emotionally, know realistically what you can provide your child. Because you may not be in a place emotionally to provide a whole lot to them, but you can provide something to them. So you know what you know what you don't know, and then know when to get help. So know who can you lean into to help your children get what they need emotionally when you're not able to. So it may be leaning into your husband or your wife. It may be leaning into extended family. It may be reaching out to the school or reaching out to their sports coaches and asking for help when it comes to helping your child emotionally when you may not have the ability to do so during a season of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also say that if it's the way I heard the question was maybe there's emotional unhealth between the parents. If they're in the middle of conflict, to some level you want to be real and honest in front of your kids, but if it's really unstable, try to have that conflict not right in front of the kids, just so that they're not absorbing that.
And I think it's okay to model for your children and say, hey, mommy and daddy, depending upon how old they are, we just don't have the ability to have this conversation right now. We're trying. Maybe that's a conversation we can have later. Or maybe they're older, maybe they're teens. I think you can be a little bit more forthright with them and say, hey, my emotional tank is empty. Or this is something that I don't feel like I'm ready to talk to you about at this moment. I want to, but I still got to do some of my own work before I can have this conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is we're not going to always do it well.
Yeah.
One of my heroes, Jim Cofield, I remember him saying, good parents aren't people who get it right all the time. They're people who are humble and repentant when they get it wrong. And so many kids never hear their parents say, I'm sorry. So we need to apologize to our kids. And we also want to show our kids, like, I need Jesus too.
Absolutely.
I need the gospel too.
Absolutely. Can I tell a quick funny story? So when we were pregnant with Natalie, one of the coolest cards we got at a baby shower, Tara opened it up and said, congratulations, you can now mess your own kid up. But I say that because it's such a funny but yet true story, in that we are going to fall short. And Mark, you hit it head on, man. That's when the power of confession, modeling confession and asking for forgiveness to your children is so, so powerful.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times people try to prevent pain from their babies. But for me, I'm always trying to point people towards repair.
Yep.
It's like we're human.
Yep.
We will hurt others. It's all about focusing on repair and pursuing your babies back.
Yep.
Because I lose my mind sometimes, and so do they.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage holidays and celebrations with multiple step parents and exes that are not on the same page with lots of unresolved conflict?
Ooh. Family counseling.
Truly.
Oh, man.
You might have to take turns. This year, this family gets us for Thanksgiving. Next year, the other family gets us at a different holiday. Or
And Mark alluded to it when we were doing the Q&A, when we were live. You gotta realistically know what you can handle. So you might be able to engage a certain section of the family, but because of the emotional unhealth in the family, you got to be realistic. You might be able to only do a couple of hours. So be realistic about what your expectations are, and know that you may run out of emotional battery sooner rather than later.
Mhm. And I mean, these are real struggles that lots of people deal with. And if you're looking at it through the lens of how can I be who God calls me to be toward these people, sometimes it might be making a hard decision like, no, we're not going to stay at their house. We're actually going to get an Airbnb. And the response is always, but that's going to hurt them or they're going to be upset. And it's like, well, they're going to be more upset if you stay somewhere else or if you just blow up on them and or shut down staying with them. And ultimately, you want to put the boundaries in place that you need to so that you can be the person that you know God is calling you to be.
Absolutely. And the truth is, and this is hard to digest, we're not responsible for their emotional responses. We're not responsible for their emotions. So making decisions like that, good, healthy decisions, biblical decisions, are decisions that we have to take volition and make with the understanding that we're not responsible for how a person responds.
And I would also add, parents, we have the worst guilt of not feeling like we do enough. But when they're in your home, it matters. Like what you do in your home matters. That consistency and stability you can provide, and your kids will know the difference when they're in your home. And if they go over to the exes or other families, like they will know the difference. So what you do matters. So just focus on what you can do and just try to do the best you can and have grace for yourself.
Yeah. And family counseling.
And family counseling. Is it important to involve our family into personal problems? Wouldn't this create unreasonable strain and expectations that may negatively spread?
Isn't that the definition of triangulation? And I don't mean that in a flippant way. How was the question asked?
Is it important to involve our family into personal problems?
I mean, like, if Paul and I are having a conflict between the two of us, we don't need to take it to the rest of the family.
But if one of us has a serious illness, we want we would probably want the family to know.
Yeah.
Um, I think it goes back to, are you able to work through that conflict in a Matthew 18 way, where it's just the two of you? And if you are, there's your answer. But if you're not, you have to get help. The question is, do you turn to your family for help? Are they able to provide you that help? Is it going to be emotionally appropriate for them to provide you that help? Or do you need to not involve your family, but instead get therapeutic help, get counseling help? But there are times I think practically your family could be a benefit. So like when we were younger and our kids were younger and we were emotionally exhausted from parenting two toddlers, you bet we turned to our parents for help. Did we share with them our emotional struggle? No, it was more of, hey, we're tired, take the kids. So I think there are times it's appropriate, but if it's emotional, if it's something that you can work out between the two of you, I think Scripture would call us to practice Matthew 18.
Kind of sounds like it depends on who the family is and what the problem is, because that would differ based on, yeah. This is a little lengthy. How do we deal with our preteen daughter who often acts without respect towards us when we ask them to do chores or homework? She often feels like the bad child of the family and does everything wrong. How can we best approach her?
I like to say, without specifically answering this question, that every child's behavior is trying to tell us something. So one of the things that I would encourage this family to think through is, what is your daughter's behavior telling you? What is she trying to communicate to you, not necessarily with her words, but with her behavior? And I think if you can wrestle and try to understand what her behavior is communicating, then that's going to give you a framework in regards to how you engage her.
if she's acting out in defiance, powering up is not going to win you any brownie points. You're just going to escalate that conflict further. So try to figure out what's underneath the way she's acting.
Yeah, and to make sure you're ready to be a non-anxious presence.
Yes,
A
absolutely.
calm presence if there is emotional flooding or emotional intensity on her part.
And that's hard to do if she's losing her mind and you're at your wit's end and you
Yeah.
keep saying, can you please not do that, or whatever it is. But I do think we have to go with curiosity, like you're saying, like I wonder what about this, what's really going on, and what does she want, or what goal is being blocked. And you kind of have to be in a certain kind of headspace to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So it's easier said than done.
And I also think it helps. It goes back to controlling what you can control, right? I mean, that's so important, because if you're not in a calm state to engage, that could just make things worse. I also think it's important for us to understand a little bit about human development. Your daughter may be acting the way she's acting, and she may not be able to name why. It could just be that her body's changing. It could be the fact that her brain structure's changing. It could be the fact that her body's chemically changing. And I think it's important for us as parents to know that teens are going to change and grow in different ways. Some kids are going to be more emotional. Some kids are going to be a little bit more docile. So I think part of it is understanding how the Lord is wiring our child. And some of it just may be the fact that she's changing. It may not be anything interpersonal. And when I hear in that question that she always feels like she's the bad, she's the bad part of the family or the bad member of the family, I think that communicates right there that she can't even make sense out of her own behavior. So I think grace, understanding, yes, boundaries, you have to be the parent. But sometimes our little guys, and I mean our teen guys, they don't know what they do.
You don't want your only interactions with them to be critical and punitive
Exactly,
and things like that.
Yep. I would think in this situation, I would think a fun mom-daughter date or a fun dad-daughter date would be great. And if she's like, why are we doing this? Just because you're my daughter and I love you. Let's go have fun together. It's just, Gottman would call this in couples repair attempts. Like, do something fun and just surprise her and try to make a repair attempt in regards to your relationship with
Love that. This is also a long one. Due to childhood abuse and emotional abandonment, I find myself withdrawing from any emotional intimacy and find it incredibly difficult to communicate about anything non-transactional. What are practical ways and steps to be able to begin doing so with my wife and kids in order to break patterns and establish healthy relationships and rhythms?
That's a brave question. Kudos to whoever asked it. So I think, based upon what I hear in this question, dipping in what's called attachment theory, there's a really good chance this person has a insecure attachment style, because it sounds to me like they were wounded growing up. And if they were wounded growing up, one of the things I would encourage them to think through: how have they ever learned how to trust? So part of the journey they're going to be on, if they have an insecure attachment style, they never learned how to attach or connect in a healthy way because it was always unsafe for them. So they would benefit getting into therapy and learning how to answer questions like, what is safety? How do I trust? When is it safe enough to trust someone? If a person's been wounded and abused, how are they supposed to know what safety and trust looks like? Even in a healthy environment, it feels weird and uncomfortable for somebody that's never experienced that before.
The beautiful thing, though, from the perspective of attachment, you can gain secure attachment, and the main ways that happens is in the context of relationship with God, understanding Him as a good father who's not constantly disappointed, who's not waiting to punish you. Also, in the context of a relationship with a partner, but the therapeutic relationship also. So I don't know who's asking this question, but I think we'd all recommend like getting into counseling if you're not processing through some of that, because I don't think it comes naturally to name what's going on in your heart to anyone, but especially if it's never been safe to, if there's never been any room to, just knowing that you should doesn't mean that you're able to. And sometimes practicing in a safe environment with a safe person is a really good way to do that.
I think of that's great. I think of the story, the monster at the end of this book. Have you ever read that?
That's like my favorite children's book.
Yeah. Why is it so powerful? Because I think for people that have been wounded and abused, for any of us really that have to do some hard emotional work, we are scared to death to really get that out in the open. And we are so scared of what is that going to look like when we finally name it, when we give it a face, when we acknowledge that it's real. It's the monster at the end of the book. Grover's like, don't turn the page, don't turn the page, don't turn the page. And you finally get to the end of the book, and what is it? Grover's like, oh, it's just me. Why were you so scared? I think that's what happens when we get into a healthy therapeutic environment, is we're able to name it. And if we can sit with a loving counselor, that counselor is going to show us, yes, it's painful and it's real, but it's not as monstrous. For some people it is, but it's not as monstrous as you thought it would be. We're going to learn how to deal with this together.
I've never read it. I'm adding it to Amazon right now.
Read it tonight to your daughter.
I have a T-shirt.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
For $5.57, you can get it on Amazon right now.
Highly recommend it. Read it tonight to your child.
Little golden book.
Yep.
Oh.
That's good. I like that. That's your favorite. That's so cool.
Is there always an scapegoat within families?
I would say the unhealthy one.
Are there any healthy families?
No.
Well, so there are unhealthy families and there are honest families.
I mean, it's always easier to focus on someone else's issue than your own.
Yeah.
But if you are able to recognize that you're doing that and stop doing it, that'd be ideal.
Or recognize that you're tempted to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point of family systems theory and working on your family system, is so that the system's healthy, so that none of that systemic anxiety has to be pressed down on anyone. So I think if a family's healthy to the point that they're working hard to know their sins, know their weaknesses, confess those, practice confession and forgiveness, getting into therapy, working on their stuff, I think that family can prevent an identified patient from happening.
That awareness and doing your own work.
Yep, that's it. I mean, that's the definition. If I'm doing my work and I'm focusing on what I can control, I'm not going to push that anxiety on anybody.
Fair. Okay, can you give us some more examples of the identified patient issue in the context of a young child that bears the burden of generational sin?
So let's take the example of, let's say there's 4 generations and great-granny and great-granddad did not communicate emotionally. They didn't know how to connect emotionally. Well, now that is passed down to grandma and grandpa. They're not able to communicate emotionally. Well, now that's passed down to mom and dad. They're not able to communicate emotionally. So it's a pattern of an inability to communicate on an emotional level. And then you have this little child who, let's say they grow up, well, before they grow up, they are growing up in a family system that may be able to interact in a kind, calm way. But when it comes to any emotional issues that need to be communicated, they're not communicated. So there's this unresolved anxiety in the system that child's going to feel. That child feels things. Children feel things, and they understand things so much more than we realize. So let's say this child grows up, falls in love, They want to be able to communicate how much they love to the person that they're going to end up marrying and that they're going to become engaged to, but they don't know how to do so because of generations of a family that never learned how to communicate emotionally. And that significant other is looking at their fiance to be and they're thinking, why can't you communicate emotionally with me? What's wrong with you? When really this person is identified as the problem, but they're dealing with 4 generations, being the 4th generation of coming from a family that never learned how to communicate emotionally. So this person could easily be the identified patient when really they're dealing with generations of an inability to connect emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think of another example of an identified patient. There was a mom who was dealing with clinical depression, but she wasn't getting help for it, wasn't really getting medicated, and wasn't getting counseling. And that just the emotional stress of that in the home, the child actually became ill and stayed physically ill for months on end. And all that really does is it allows the mom to ignore her depression and just focus on the sick kid. And I mean, minor illness, not like major illness, but it kind of perpetuates itself.
Mm-hmm.
And here's another one. Did work with a client one time whose child was constantly urinating in bed. This child was 7 or 8 years old. And granted, they were coming to me. It was interesting. They were coming to me because their marriage was struggling. But in the process of talking about their marriage, they really started focusing on their son who was having a urination problem at 7 or 8. And it occurred to me while counseling with them, they were spending a whole lot of time focusing on their son and his urination problem. And all of a sudden, it clicked for them, or it clicked for me, and I tried to help them see it. You're focusing on your son so much that you're not focusing on the tension in your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it was a coincidence that once they got healthy, once they started working on their marriage, once their marriage got healthier, their sons stopped having urination problems. Now, granted, there are biological reasons that could happen, but I think that was a very systemic, stress-induced problem that this son was having.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anything to keep the peace,
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
how the symptoms arise.
Yeah, and if we're not careful, we'll sacrifice our own children and their emotional health in order to keep ourselves from dealing with what we need to deal with.
I used to almost exclusively counsel adolescents. I remember I had an 8th grade boy, and the parents wanted him to start going to counseling because his grades were slipping. And often you sit with an adolescent and it's like, oh, the parents have an issue, but it's like adolescents act out instead of like there's inward stuff going on. But I sit with this boy and he's like the grade slipping is like he got some B's and C's in Latin, 8th grade Latin. And I start, asking him questions. It's like, well, why are you taking Latin? Well, I have to get ahead if I'm going to be a lawyer. Oh, you want to be a lawyer? Didn't even have a category for did he want to be a lawyer? It was like, you're going to be a lawyer. And he feels all this pressure. But the outward behaviors, his grades are slipping. He's, not doing his homework. But there's no curiosity about what's going on in his heart that might be causing that.
A bit of a lengthy one. I am a counselor, and I have a child client who frequently confesses to me about their problematic family dynamics. It is becoming more and more clear to me that they are being scapegoated. What's the best way to approach this with him and his family to support him and avoid triangulation?
I think as a counselor, and you guys chime in as counselors yourself, and even in the clinical work.
I'm leaving this to you.
No, but it's closer than you realize. I would almost think it's the exact opposite of triangulation. It's getting involved in abdicating for that child. It's giving that child a voice that otherwise that child does not have. It's defending and taking up for that child by getting involved. And I don't see how, depending upon the age of the child, I don't see how you can address that system unless you get the parents involved.
Mhm.
So I think as a counselor, you would have to communicate with the parents and ask them to come in for a session, help explain to them what you're seeing in that child, and try to help them see that this poor little guy or this poor little girl is not the problem, but instead the the
Symptom.
it's what this child is experiencing is a symptom of a bigger issue that's going on in the family. But I think as a counselor, you're not triangulating yourself; you're advocating for that child in that situation.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's really good.
I can say,
Yeah.
just having been in those kind of situations, it's tricky because you honestly care about this child. And I've had situations. Okay, the story I was just talking about, that eighth grader, after several sessions, he confided in me. For 2 years, he had been hearing a grown man's voice in his head telling him to do things.
Oh wow!
And he had never told anyone this. And it's at that point I'm like, I think we need to tell your mom and dad. Um, or I said, I think you need to tell your mom and dad this.
Mhm.
And I said, but I can be there with you if you want me to. And he did want that. We go through all of this with his parents. He never came back. Parents
Yeah,
pulled him out. And that's
yeah,
the fear. It's like
Yeah.
when you involve the parents, there's this fear that they don't want to hear that. And it almost feels like, well, which is worse, to not tell them and just try to keep loving that
yeah.
kid, or to do the thing when you risk losing them.
It's a real tension.
Yeah.
I think in my work with families and littles, I just believe parents should be the parents. And for me, with a situation like this, if my client is the child, obviously I will keep confidentiality within reason, but I would be working to prep the child and empower the child to be comfortable to share it with their family one day. And then I would give permission to talk to their parents and frame it in a way of like, hey, I want to equip your parents to be able to learn how to hear from you. Because then, I mean, obviously it can go that way anyways, but you have a higher chance if you can try to equip the parents to actually receive the child and learn how to listen and not try to fix. And we communicate to listen and understand instead of trying to fix a solution. That would be my approach. But again, the parents tend to be the customers. So they may not like that. But I just don't know how you can work with kids without involving the parents.
Mhm.
And in a situation like this, if like the situation you were sharing, Mark, it's heartbreaking because the parents are so concerned, and I get it because we're broken, messy human beings, but the parents are so concerned about exposure and about their own shame and letting the child down or not being good parents or just their family not being reflected on positively. If people knew this about my son, that it's their own shame that robs their child of getting the help that he needs.
Yeah, it's powerful. Um, Can you share how a dysfunctional sibling impacts the other siblings when all of the attention and energy from the parents is focused on the problem child?
I just said that's funny because my sister and I, she's 6.5 years older than me. We always fight over who's mom's favorite. And I would say that I'm not saying anything we haven't joked about publicly, that she thinks I'm mom's favorite because I'm the goody two shoes. And I think she's mom's favorite because she had a little rebellious streak growing up. And because of that, mom and dad didn't give her the attention that she deserved. So I say that she's mom's favorite because she deserved the attention. So our dynamic was different. I didn't get the attention because I was the rebellious child. I got the attention because I was the good child, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, just for what that's worth.
I feel like the way I see it playing out when I work with adults who kind of grew up with that dynamic is sometimes, and this, you can weigh in on this may even apply to you. Sometimes when there is an older sibling that's getting into trouble, the younger almost feels like, well, I need to be compliant, and the good one, because their mom and dad are under so much stress dealing
Oh,
with
yeah.
that
Mhm.
sibling, that I just need to be okay. And you kind of learn that, and you carry that into adulthood. I just need to be okay. There's no room for my problems. There's no room for my emotions. And it might not even be that mom and dad wouldn't have been curious or wouldn't have been emotionally available if you brought it, but
Yeah.
you internalize almost this like, oh, they're already dealing with so much. I'm just going to keep all that to myself. And then you bring that into marriage, and you bring that into friendships and things like that, where things are eating at you, but you're not even super aware of it yourself because
Mhm.
you've lived your whole life saying there's no room for that stuff. I just need to be okay.
Yeah, that's one end of the spectrum. That was the spectrum I was on, where I felt like I had to behave well in order not to be a burden. But I saw the way my parents reacted to my sister. I didn't want to get in trouble, so I became the good kid.
Mhm.
But I think there's also another element that happens in some families where if my older sibling or my younger sibling is being an absolute rebel, if I'm going to get attention, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to up their rebellion,
Mhm.
and I'm going to be even worse. Um, so I think we've got to be careful when that dynamic plays out as well.
Mhm. Yep. All right. Lastly, what are healthy ways to set boundaries when your partner's anxiety or depression impacts the whole family?
Tara, I think you're made for this one.
Well, you can only control what you can control, which is mostly yourself. Um, if your partner's behaviors are not safe for your kids, then you've got to be protective of your kids. I think you've got to lovingly find a way to use those I statements and tell your partner that I'm feeling this from in response to your behavior.
Mhm.
And I think something you did for me that helped us was you did go on the journey of understanding anxiety. You and it changed the dynamic for us when you started to understand that speaking um, physiological health language to me wasn't doing anything for me, and you learned instead to get in the floor with me and hold me when I was having a panic attack, or just hold me when I was having a breakdown. If I was having a specific breakdown on a specific night, I think that journey for you, understanding what I was going through, made all the difference in the world and how we interacted and how you love me.
I think in the end, you guys as parents are a unit. You're a unit. So having outside conversations away from the kiddos,
Mhm.
just trying to figure out and navigate and just name it like, hey, I know you're struggling. How are ways we can be a team to address this? And if we had an oopsie situation, then go back to your kids and own it. Like, hey, mommy had a hard time.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
And then do the game plan that you guys came up with. So we don't want to throw our partners under the bus, right? But it's also just owning like we're human. We have hard times too. And mama's just going through something, you know? But again, like it goes back to you guys being a unit and figuring out how do you game plan this. My husband is also a counselor, and he always says like the problem is the problem. Your marriage is your partner is not the problem.
Exactly.
So really trying to keep that focus of like your partner has anxiety and depression. That's the problem, not them as a human being. And remembering that they're human beings
Yeah.
who are just struggling and trying to survive.
I think the tension we probably all feel with these questions is there's no context.
Yeah.
And so it's like I would almost want to understand, because this isn't in the question, but I almost get from the question there's anxiety, there's depression, it's having an effect on the whole family, and they're unwilling to do anything about it. And the question is, what are healthy ways to set boundaries? And that's a hard thing. It's like, I feel like to answer that question, you almost need to ask some
Yeah.
More
questions.
context.
Um, But I mean, the reality is, it does sound like this person needs help, and it's so hard to help someone get help when they don't want it, because you don't want to nag. But there does come a point where I think maybe this is what it's getting at, where it's like, for the good of the whole family, something needs to happen.
Yeah.
Something needs to change here.
So would you take it so far as an ultimatum? Your behavior is hurting the kids, and if you can't get help, we're going to need to make some changes. I mean, like, what are we? Again, not knowing the full context makes it hard to generalize an answer. But
Paul, you can weigh in too, because I see the wheels turning. I'm trying to think, if I were actually sitting with this person, I would want to tell them, I don't know what you should do.
Yeah.
You don't know what you should do, but God does, and let's lean on Him. James 1:5 says, if anyone lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault. So definitely do that. But also, we can't navigate this stuff alone. So do you have support? Do you have friends that you can lean on? Do you have a pastor or a counselor that you can invite into this? Because sometimes that's what the enemy wants us to do, is to isolate and be embarrassed by it, so we don't talk to anyone about it. But sometimes just inviting a few people who care into it, maybe there's a friend or a family member who can come alongside. And but I know, like, the reality is, it's hardest to hear, I think, from a partner, hey, you need to do something about this. That's why I go to, what other support system is there.
Yeah, I would definitely want to know more about what's happening. I think that would provide so much context in regards to how we as counselors or therapists would engage this family. A few of the things I would add is, you can't control that person. So I think you have to focus on self-care, making sure that, if you're going to be with this person, you have to make sure you're taking care of yourself, so that when you're engaging them, you're in a proper headspace. You're as rested as you can be, depending upon what this person's severity of mental illness is. I think part of putting up a boundary is saying, hey, I love you, we love you. But when your behavior is this way, you're unsafe. And if you're unsafe, or if your behavior is unsafe, focus on the behavior, not them. If your behavior is unsafe, I don't know if I and the children can be around you when this happens. I think that's one way to put up a boundary. And then another thing that I was thinking is, if this person is depressed, if this person does have anxiety, or something else that's undiagnosed, have they thought about the route of medication? And my stance on medication has always been, and I'm someone that's been on anxiety medication for a while, is there a medication that this person might need that hasn't been diagnosed? So maybe instead of the counselor route, you try the doctor route to help them. To find a medication that can maybe take the edge of the anxiety off, or the edge of the depression off, so that they could then be in their right mind and know that they need the help that they need.
Yeah, medication's there to stabilize, not fix.
Yep.
Just create more space for you to do it. I would also emphasize everything you guys said, of like going back to Tara's part about I statements. It's like, you want to be communicating what you need and your own boundaries of where you're at, because that's okay. You're allowed to say, hey, this is overwhelming for me, and I don't know how to navigate this. Like, I loved when you said, I don't know what to do, you don't know what to do, because then it invites that conversation of like, hey, like, the problem's a problem. We're here as a unit. Let's work together on it. So, yeah. I'm hearing themes of all of your guys' answers of come with curiosity, come with understanding, obviously have boundaries and structure where it's needed, love like Jesus, and And most of all, like, the title might be family dynamics, but it starts with you as an individual. You need to do your work. That sounds really aggressive. It's helpful to do.
The real Tiffany is coming out.
I'm way too blunt. It's helpful for us to just focus on what we can control, and it has to start somewhere. Yes, it's your family, but you're a part of the system, and change happens with the start of one person. So I hope these answers were helpful. You are so welcome to reach out to me, and I will connect you with any of them if you want to talk to them, or if you just need help connecting with a local counselor or a pastor. And we are so glad you tuned in to learn more about family dynamics.